What is up, my fellow Chibits? Today, I'm here to bring all of you the weekly manga chapter review of One Piece rather early this week. So, I got up early today because I realized today is going to be a very busy day. I mean, because a lot of anime is coming out from Fall of Anime 2016, and I'm glad I did, because apparently One Piece is out early, and all the other chapters are going to be coming out early too. So, I'm assuming it has something to do with a form of holiday, because usually when a chapter comes out early for, Weekly Shonen Jump, it means that there's supposedly a holiday next week. So I don't know exactly what's going on in Japan or not, but I'm going to assume that there's a holiday next week, and maybe we might get chapters next week, maybe we might not, I have no idea, I'm just assuming so, because usually that's what that means in Japan. So regardless of that, let's talk about this chapter of One Piece, which, gotta say, this chapter makes up for the final page of last week's chapter, and gotta say, Oda, I know Oda doesn't watch this video, but I just want to say my apologies to Oda after witnessing this chapter, after reading it, and seeing how he made the final part of last week's chapter so much better in this week's chapter, and I gotta clap for the greatness of Oda's writing, just to be able to make a better explanation for why Luffy is able to eat the biscuit soldiers that Cracker's been sending out. It makes me happy to see this chapter, because it really makes the last week's chapter so much better, just because of the information we got in this chapter. So let's explain. So you remember how last week I brought up, and I had a little bit of a problem with how Luffy was somehow able to eat the biscuit soldiers, even though he wasn't able to damage the soldiers with his Gear 4. I mentioned, I was talking about it all last week at the final part of the chapter review. I was talking about it. Well, in this chapter, it is revealed the reason why Luffy is able to even fight them in the first place and eat them, which I did discuss this a while back, maybe like 3 or so chapters ago. I talked about maybe Nami could play a big part in this fight, because, I mean, she can use rain, weather type abilities, and so she most likely could, make the biscuit soldiers a little bit soggy to where they're not as strong or hardened as they were when Luffy was fighting them. I even mentioned that multiple chapters ago, and so I'm kind of glad to see Oda use that little trait about Nami, of how she can use weather and stuff to be able to fight someone like Cracker, and I really am happy to see Nami being very important in this fight, because if it wasn't for her, Luffy probably would not have had an easy time with this. Well, he's not really having an easy time, he's been fighting for hours, but I mean, Luffy might not have won this fight if it was not thanks to Nami using her weather abilities to be able to make the biscuit soldiers soggier for Luffy can actually eat them. So I just gotta commend Oda for two things right here. For one, clarifying how Luffy was able to fight the biscuit soldiers for that long while eating them, and also how Nami is very important to this fight, and she's just not sitting there watching, she's playing a very big role. So overall, when it came to the fight of Biscuit, when it came to the fight with Luffy and Nami versus Biscuit, I'm completely satisfied. In the final part of it, it suits Luffy's antics of how he fights in combat, so I'm completely fine when it comes to that. So talking about, the Biscuit fight, I want to kind of get that out of the way before I get into the Sanji stuff. So the Biscuit stuff going on, besides Nami helping out and Luffy getting the explanation of how he's able to eat the biscuit soldiers, Luffy uses multiple hours upon binge eating, eating these different biscuit soldiers, he uses it against Cracker. Now, in a Luffy fashion, Luffy straight up, he goes Gear 4 while, constantly eating all these soldiers. He's bulked up, like he's completely full, his stomach is expanding because how much he's eaten, and he goes Gear 4. It's like full tank or something, I forget the exact title of it, it's like full tank something, Gear 4 Luffy. He goes full Gear 4, and Cracker tries to charge him, and Luffy literally uses the fat, like all his fat stomach after eating so many soldiers, to knock this man out of orbit. Like, this man just gets launched, like, woo, he's gone, he's completely gone. So, just gotta take a moment to say, when it came to the fight, it was typical Luffy fashion to see the way he defeated him, but also seeing how Nami helped him out made me very satisfied. So, Gear 4 won, and at the end of the day, Gear 4 is what really won it. He managed to blast him off in outer space, kind of like Team Rocket, but it was thanks to Nami doing the setup, doing that support, while, Luffy was doing the tank. He was constantly doing that tank and stuff throughout the entire fight. So, good job, Luffy. Very, very good job. Okay. So getting off of that, let's talk about the Chopper and Carrot stuff. So Chopper and Carrot, as we know, they're in the mirror world, and they've been going around doing reconnaissance, trying to get information and stuff, and now we get to see that they're currently on the run. You have it to where Big Mom's daughter is currently chasing after Carrot and Chopper throughout the entire mirror world, so they're constantly having to run. They can't just stay still, and so that means that they will eventually probably have to face her and fight her, and I mean, they might be so much of a big problem that maybe even Brule might actually kick, you know, Chopper and Carrot out of the mirror world because they're just that big of a handful to deal with, and they're causing too much of a problem. I could see something like that happening maybe in the future chapters, but for now, though, that was kind of a little bit of an update status on what's going on with those two. Now, moving into Sanji. Now, Sanji's stuff in this chapter, oh my. There's two big points about this. One, his wounded face, his swollen face after getting in a fight in last week's chapter, and the reveal of why he's so kind to women. Now, as I talked about in last week's chapter, the reason why maybe Sanji was so kind to women is because all the women in his life were very good to him. For instance, his sister and his mother. He cared about them, he tried to protect them, and they're the only ones that really showed any compassion or love towards him. I mentioned in last week's chapter that most likely is the reason why Sanji acts the way he does, and it might still be some form of the reason of why he treats women like he does, but one of the big reasons is a flashback we get in this chapter, which gives characterization to Sanji, which I really, really appreciate. So, Sanji has his reveal of why he treats women like he does. And it comes at something that should have been expected, but I didn't expect it, because of all the revelations with Sanji's family. Zeph taught Sanji not to harm women, and that, it makes me respect that man. Like, I mean, I already liked that man quite a bit when I saw his introduction in the One Piece series. I've always cared about that man. He was a really good man, especially with the first flashback we got on Sanji. I really respected Zeph. But with the recent events of these recent flashbacks, my respect for Zeph has grown even more just because of what he's done for Sanji and how he cared for this man. That isn't even blood related. He cared for Sanji so much, like a real parent. And seeing how he told Sanji, like, you better not ever treat women like that. I will not have any woman take hits or anything like that, kick them or whatever. I don't want to see you do that. You guys need to be real men. Don't do shit like that. And the way he was straight up telling Sanji this, it was like a parent teaching his child not to, you know, hit a woman. And he's like, if you do that, I want to freaking cut your balls off and then I'll slit my throat in the process. Like, straight up savage. Like, Zeph went complete savage mode when he said that. But it makes me respect him to know that he cares for Sanji so much because, you know, he's teaching him like a son, and it just shows you how much of a good parent Zeph was and why Sanji cares about him. It's not just because of the situation with Sanji was on the island stuck and he was starving and Zeph helped him out. It's not just the reason why Sanji cares about him so much. It's these other little points throughout time he spent with Zeph that really made Sanji who he was. I mean, for the reason why he doesn't use his hands to fight, why he uses his legs, why he's a good chef to this day, why he cares about Zeph so much because of, you know, his starving and stuff, but also now the way he treats women is also thanks to Zeph. So that Sanji's the type of person he is today thanks to Zeph. It's not even to do with his parents, it's thanks to Zeph constantly being a good parent to him that made him who he was. So, Oda giving a lot of clarification to Sanji's character, which I appreciate, and definitely made this chapter so much better for me personally. So, the final thing to talk about is Sanji's swollen face. So Sanji's face is completely swollen, and as we know, he needs to go meet, you know, the bride. He needs to go to meet the person he's marrying, and I mean, showing up with a swollen face is not something you want the, you know, bride to see. You don't want the bride to see your swollen face, because that's just bad. That's really bad. So you have it to where he has to put on this, like, fake facing, like this face that covers his face, and it just puts the swelling down to where his face looks fine, but the swelling is kind of still there, it's hidden. It's like kind of tricking his body, like it's healing, you know, of his body, and saying like his body's fine, but it's really not. It's appearing to be fine, but he really isn't at this time. So Sanji right now, he's just putting on, you know, the like mask thing for he could just appear to be fine, and then when he finally is done, he could take it off and try to make sure he feels better after that. So Sanji has to kind of put on a mask to make sure he looks, you know, completely fine in whatever happens in the upcoming chapters. So that's about it when it comes to this chapter of One Piece. I mean, it was a very good chapter. I gotta say, I really like the writing Oda did in this chapter when it came to Nami, to the Luffy and Biscuit, and, you know, Cracker fight. Big fan of that. But I'm a big fan of the flashback with Sanji and that development he got. That was just, I love that. I'm a big fan. Sanji's one of my personal favorite characters, and seeing him get that development like that, seeing him get the characterization, the reveal of why he treats women like he does, seeing how Zeph is such a good character, and how he continues to have meaning and weight in the story even this far in, I'm happy. So, very, very good chapter, Oda. Thank you so much. And also, how'd you all feel about this chapter of One Piece? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? How'd you feel about the explanation of how, you know, Nami was helping out Luffy the entire time and how Luffy was able to eat the soldiers? How do you feel about that? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.